as you know, we're talking about the migrant release. So what is your position on that going on here in Yuma?
I'm very much against it. I mean, we've seen this unconstitutional, chaotic crisis created by this administration who's been blinded and inept, following the previous administration's successes. So this is self-done. The catastrophic aspect of just turning people loose without COVID testing, utilizing centers to overflow rates, and then to impugn local communities like Yuma and El Paso with a job that the federal government is supposed to do. This is their job. And this is illegal actions being taken here. So once again, this is cataclysmic for towns like Yuma.
I know you mentioned COVID, especially now during a pandemic. What do you think the kind of risks that this poses moving forward with the pandemic?
You can't fix the pandemic if you constantly have an intrusion of a source that you can't confine. And so once again, problems. This administration talks out of both sides of their mouth, and the person that it hurts most is the American citizen.
Much of the United States is also not able to open at full capacity. So what's your take on Biden's allowing facilities to operate at full capacity?
Well, I mean, don't have our kids back in school full time across the country, but yet we'll put migrants, sleeping next to each other back and forth. Facilities that were meant for 100, are 6 times that now. So what gives? You have to be consistent, at least with your policies. But this administration shows that it's not even close to being that.
How do you think this affects the duties of our Border Patrol agents here locally?
Well, they become babysitters instead of enforcing the law, upholding the constitutional obligation of the federal government. I think the morale would be detrimental. We've never seen it so high when we saw it under the Trump administration, when we had stay in Mexico, the adjudication process for asylum, as well as the deterrence of coming across, getting rid of catch and release. So I think it's very detrimental in regards to when you facilitate people to come and violate your laws as an incoming action, the first action into a country.
Our unemployment rates are also pretty high here in Yuma County. So how do you think this migrant release will impact the job market in our area?
It always hurts because they'll work for less. Most of the time it's under the table. And when you start looking across the board, it's something we've held up for scrutiny. Programs like the OPT program, the Optional Practical Training Program, where we actually incentivize big businesses like platforms, Google, Facebook, to import cheaper wages from India and Pakistan and China at the expense of our citizens. And then they get a reward for that, a 15.5% deduction in their, which is the FICA withholding taxes. That's absurd. They're not putting anything in or very little in, and they're going to take something out at the end. That's called double dipping.
Where do you think that these migrants are going to be taken to, or how are they going to be cared for now that they are brought into the United States?
They're going wherever they want. I mean, there's no tracking. I mean, Sheriff Wilmot, Mayor Nichols, they don't have the resources. Neither does the state of Arizona. You're seeing Texas fight back. You're seeing Arizona trying to fight back. But the ominous power of the federal government and the willy-nilly inept administration has really created this crisis. So we have no idea where they go. And once again, this reiterates, when they get a court date, over 90% do not show up for that court date. I'd actually send them to Delaware, Biden's home state, and see how they like it.
I do want to kind of transition a little bit here with the COVID relief bill. Is any of this funding going to apply to migrants?
It is so very, very little. I mean, out of the package, less than 9% is going for COVID. And some of it's not even being spent. Most of it's not even being spent until 2022. So a lot of people, I mean, there's over $1 trillion, as experts have said, is still out there from previous packages that haven't been used. So this was just a wish bag of bailouts for governments that haven't done their job for pensions, teachers that haven't even spent the money for schools today. So this was just a hopelessly bad, horrendous bill.
How are you voting?
No. There's nothing they can do to that bill except trash it. That would get my vote.
The minimum wage, the $15 minimum wage vote from over the weekend, why do you think it didn't pass?
It didn't pass because I think our Senator Sinema realizes that when you put artificial restraints on the marketplace, it hurts the very people it's supposed to help. It's a marketplace. We should have the access. If somebody deserves it, they should be paid more, and the market will bear that out. So when you artificially put the big thumb of the federal government on the market, it changes it dramatically.
And you did mention Senator Sinema. Do you think that kind of had any impact on our Arizonans here in terms of voting for the minimum wage?
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure she hears it from the business community. From the standpoint is that you look at areas in the state of Arizona, like in Flagstaff, they have an artificial area of minimum wage. It has hurt the economy and it's hurt the business market up in Flagstaff. So I think we got examples right close to home that we can look at that says this doesn't work. It doesn't apply.
With that $1,400 stimulus, are you for or against that money going out to Americans?
Well, I put out an amendment that basically shows you just 9 line items that we tallied it up to the American worker. The government through COVID has impugned what they call the takings from the American businessman and American families and workers. So if we took those 9 totals, we could give $10,000 per person to the Americans. Now, that's some real cash. So, we need to open our schools. We need to open our businesses. We need to get it on track like the science says. So from that standpoint, it's all about getting the economy up and running.
Regarding the migrant release or COVID relief that we haven't addressed?
Shameful what's happening in Washington, D.C. when you have all the power concentrated in a speaker's hands who has the ilk and ill will of the American Constitution and the American people at hand. When those that come into this country illegally have more rights than citizens. That's sad. That is really sad. And it shows you how far the left has taken us. It's a time that we need to correct this. And 2022 can't come fast enough.